It was the kind of Boston morning that makes you believe in new starts. Crisp air, gray sky, the soft rustle of dry leaves sliding along the sidewalk. We parked outside Millstone Academy, the kind of school that made you feel underdressed no matter what you wore. Brick arches, polished brass fixtures, banners hung from the windows like medals. I had on my best jacket, the one Claire bought me years ago before the wedding. I remember tightening the cuff as we stepped inside. Claire walked 2 steps ahead, like always. The meeting was scheduled for 8:30. They served coffee in white porcelain cups with saucers. No paper. That's how they did it here. You were expected to nod, sip quietly, ask about progress indicators, and leave feeling part of a small, exclusive club of involved, competent adults. I used to feel proud walking through those halls. I used to believe I belonged. The conference room was warm. Bookshelves, sunlight through tall windows, a plate of sugarless pastries. The principal smiled, spoke in that cultivated tone used for donors and cautious parents. There were 2 teachers at the table, science and English, and an academic counselor who had the tired eyes of someone who had been sitting through versions of this conversation all week. They handed us a printout. I leaned forward, started talking about strategy, about hiring a tutor, setting up time blocks, incentives. I even mentioned a reading camp over winter break, something I'd already researched and nearly paid the deposit for. Claire sat still, hands folded, her mouth in that unreadable line. I was mid-sentence, something about academic scaffolding, when she spoke. "He's not the father." There was no emotion in her voice. No hesitation either. Not even a glance toward me. "He's just helping financially." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to. They landed like stone, immediate, complete, and with no chance to take them back. No one moved at first. The principal blinked. The science teacher looked at her hands. The counselor glanced at me, then away, as if seeing something she wished she hadn't. Claire adjusted her blazer. Calm, controlled, like she had just corrected a name tag or clarified a seating arrangement. I didn't speak. I didn't have to. I reached forward, closed the folder gently, slid it back into my leather briefcase, and sat back in my chair. Nodded once, and then I let silence carry the rest of the meeting. It was easier that way. The adults in the room adjusted quickly. They went on talking. The counselor brought up accommodations. The principal circled back to midterm averages. Claire asked 2 questions. One of the teachers chuckled politely. I didn't say another word. When it ended, we shook hands. I smiled with my mouth but not my eyes. Claire thanked them all with a pleasant, composed warmth that made her look like the perfect single mother who had simply brought along the family sponsor. That's what I had become, an accessory with a checkbook. In the car, she asked if I wanted to stop for coffee. "No," I said, looking straight ahead. "Let's just go home." She didn't press. She never pressed anymore. We drove in silence, except for the soft click of her nails on her phone screen as she typed something. Probably a thank you email, or maybe a lunch plan. I watched the city pass through the window, people walking their dogs, kids in uniforms, men with briefcases, all of it so ordinary, and all of it behind glass. At home, she disappeared into her office. I sat in the kitchen, coat still on, watching the way the afternoon light fell across the empty breakfast dishes. I could hear the washing machine thrum through the floor, a mundane domestic rhythm. Clean socks, folded shirts, auto payments processing somewhere behind the scenes. No one asked me how I felt. No one had for months. Looking back, I can tell you the signs weren't loud. That's the thing about quiet rejection, it doesn't knock. It fades. One ritual at a time. She used to ask me about my workday. Now she asked if I'd remembered to sign the tax forms. She used to send me photos from school events, science fairs, class plays, even silly stuff like the lunch menu, and I'd joke about it when I got home. Then she stopped. Said it was just easier if she handled those things. "You're busy," she said once, as if that explained anything. I wasn't invited to parent-teacher nights after a while. I found out through other parents. One of the dads at the gym mentioned how my wife had raised a great point at the latest meeting. I smiled and nodded, pretending I knew what he was talking about. I was removed slowly, Not cut out like a tumor. More like someone phasing out of a photograph. First my place at the table, then my voice in decisions. Then even the language changed. We became me, and my son came out of her mouth like a correction. Never a slip. And I, stupid, slow, hopeful, kept showing up with open hands. That night after the meeting, Claire made pasta. Poured herself a glass of wine. She was calm, smiling even. She said the meeting had gone well. That the counselor had some good suggestions. She said I probably didn't need to worry about next semester. That she'd handle it. As if I were an investor being briefed by the board. I nodded. Ate half the plate. Didn't speak much. Neither did she. Not about the sentence. Not about the way she'd sliced me out of that room like I was a stranger who'd wandered in with a wallet full of someone else's money. She didn't apologize. Because in her mind, she hadn't done anything wrong. And that was the part that finally settled something in me. It wasn't just a careless phrase. It wasn't an emotional mistake or some heat-of-the-moment line. No, it was a position. It had been decided long ago, probably in some quiet part of her mind she never shared with me. But that day she said it out loud. To them. To me. To herself. She had drawn the boundary. Made her choice. And in doing so, she gave me mine. There was no fight. No confrontation. No slammed doors. No wine glasses knocked off the counter. No shouting down a hallway about respect, loyalty, or what I had done for her and her son. That kind of scene would have made it easier, I think. At least anger is something. At least it burns hot and burns out. But Claire and I weren't made for that. We were made for silence. For closed doors and dishes washed too quietly. That night, after the school meeting, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed beside her, still as stone, eyes open in the dark. Claire turned away from me, curled into herself. She always said she slept best that way, facing the wall. I used to think it meant she trusted me. Now I know better. In that darkness, I counted every step that had brought me here. The first PTA check I wrote. The birthday parties I hosted while her son's real father sent a text or a gift card. The school supplies I picked up each August like clockwork. The college savings fund I opened before he even hit high school, thinking it was the right thing to do. Thinking that maybe, just maybe, love and presence could overwrite blood and absence. But I was wrong. She had used my name like a key. Used my bank account like a hose. Used my silence like a signature. Claire had spent the last year withdrawing emotionally, piece by piece, the way someone divests from a company before it crashes. She left the shell standing, smiling over dinner, asking me to grab milk on my way home, letting me fix the sink when it dripped. But the truth had already been packed and shipped. I just hadn't read the fine print yet. She kept my money in play, kept my name on the forms, kept me close enough to be functional but not enough to be seen. The meeting made that clear. She wasn't slipping when she said it. She was stating it. He's not the father. He's just helping financially. I stayed in bed until dawn, letting her breaths rise and fall beside me. Then I got up, showered, dressed, made coffee, and took the folder I'd kept in the bottom drawer of my desk. It held everything. Passwords, statements, tuition receipts, login credentials, linked accounts. No shaking hands. No deep breaths. Just action. I logged in to the bank. Opened the tuition account. Paused the automatic payments to Millstone Academy. Not deleted. Not closed. Just paused. Quiet, deliberate, reversible if I chose. That was the key. Then I opened the joint checking. The one we used for household expenses. Groceries, utilities, subscription services, her Pilates membership, that endless list of invisible expenses I kept afloat. I froze it, locked the card, sent a notification to her phone. She wouldn't see it until after her morning run. Then the credit card. Not the one she used daily, that one I paid off and left alone. But the backup card, the one tied to recurring school fees, textbook auto orders, club payments. I called the bank and severed the secondary user. Made it mine again. I wasn't angry. That's important to understand. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't spite. It was clarity. When someone tells you what you are, you believe them, and then you act accordingly. I wasn't the father. I was just the financier, the helper, the man whose presence was convenient, but whose claim had expired. So I walked out of the role, quietly, without drama. I called Millstone that afternoon, asked for the bursar's office, told them there'd been a change in financial responsibility and that all further invoices should be sent directly to the legal guardian. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't explain. The woman on the phone asked if this was permanent. Yes, I said. She asked if I was sure. I am. Then I emailed the school to confirm in writing, attached the documentation, marked it as final. Later that day, Claire came home from yoga, tossed her keys into the bowl, checked her phone, and paused, just long enough for the silence to stretch. She didn't say anything. Not yet. At dinner, she mentioned the joint account in passing. There's a weird lock on the card. Did you notice? I took a bite of roasted chicken, nodded, swallowed. I locked it. She blinked. Why? Because I'm not the father, I said softly. I'm just helping financially, and I decided to stop helping. Her fork froze halfway to her mouth. There it was, the first crack in her composure. She set the fork down too carefully, took a breath. Still not anger, not fear, but recognition. She knew what she'd said, and more importantly, she knew I'd heard it. I didn't mean. I think you did. Another silence. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask me to explain. She just looked at me like I'd wandered off script. Maybe I had. After dinner, I left the dishes in the sink, went into the study, opened every invoice from the past 6 months, highlighted every payment I had made on behalf of a child who now belonged entirely to someone else. Not mine. Never had been, not truly. He had my last name on nothing, my photo on no wall. He called me by my first name when it suited him and ignored me when it didn't. I paid for his soccer cleats, his orthodontist, his laptop. But he answered only to Claire, and she answered only to herself. I stopped enabling, stopped pretending, stopped paying. The next morning, Claire made coffee. She didn't speak to me. I watched her face shift when she saw the email from the school. The subject line read, "Financial change of responsibility, confirmed." She read it twice, 3 times. Her lips parted, but she said nothing. That was the final confirmation. Not the sentence in the meeting, not the absence of protest, but this silence. She wasn't surprised. She wasn't outraged. She wasn't even panicked. She was calculating. I realized then that she had never expected me to leave. Not emotionally, not financially, not completely. She thought I'd stay, keep funding the life I'd been written out of, keep showing up, keep paying. But I was done paying, because she had told me who I was, and I finally believed her. By morning, the school had questions. Real ones, administrative ones. Not about grades or behavior or test prep, but about money. That's when it got real. When a system that runs on credit and assumption suddenly has to ask, who is paying for this? They didn't call me. They called her. I was listed as emergency contact, not guardian. I paid for everything, but legally I was no one. Claire answered the phone in the kitchen while I drank my coffee across the room. She had that smile in her voice she always used with teachers and banks. A voice meant to say, "I've got this under control." But her smile cracked halfway through. "Yes. I understand. That's strange. He usually handles." A pause. A longer pause. Her eyes met mine. The quiet realization passed between us like a ripple through glass. She turned away and walked into the hallway. I heard her voice drop, sharpen, stumble, like someone suddenly unsure of the ground beneath her feet. When she returned, she didn't say a word. Just poured herself coffee, sat down, stirred it, didn't drink. It took 2 hours for the next one to come in. A follow-up email from the bursar. A scanned invoice, labeled pending payment, now addressed to Claire Morgan. No more middleman. No more safety net. I printed it, left it on the kitchen table. Next to it, I placed a copy of every financial action I had taken in the last 24 hours. Cancellations, freezes, terminations. There was no note, no summary, just facts. She found it that evening. She stood over the papers, reading silently. Her fingers traced the outlines of the notices. Her face was tight, unreadable. I watched her from the living room, the way you watch someone examine a wreck and try to find the ignition point. Eventually, she looked up. Her voice was quiet. "This feels extreme." I nodded. She waited. When I didn't answer, she added, "You could have told me." "I did," I said. "I just waited until I believed it myself." She crossed her arms. "I didn't mean it like that at the meeting. It wasn't personal." "No," I agreed. "It was structural." A silence followed, the kind that's too sharp to sit inside. She paced once, twice, then picked up the printed invoice, as if seeing her own name on a financial document for the first time. "They're going to be confused," she said finally. "The school, our son." I let the word hang there. "Ours when convenient, mine when expensive." She softened her voice. "Look, I get it. You're hurt." "I'm not hurt," I said. "I'm finished." Her jaw twitched. "You're punishing him." "No," I said calmly. "I'm just no longer paying to be erased." She tried again. "You know this wasn't about you, right?" That moment it was just a formality. Legal language. I looked her dead in the eyes. "Then let the legal father pay." That landed. Not like a blow, but like a bell being struck. Not loud, but resonant. She didn't speak again. Just sat down at the table, rubbed her temples, and stared at the numbers. And I walked away. For years I had paid to be tolerated. Paid to exist inside a narrative where I was useful but not vital. Where my money filled gaps, but my presence was optional. Where the title of stepfather was a costume. Not armor, not authority, not love. She thought I'd keep wearing it. She was wrong. The next day, the child came home from school like it was any other day. Backpack thudding against the wall. Shoes kicked off in the hallway. He asked what was for dinner. Claire cooked. I didn't speak. We sat at the table. He mentioned a club fee that was overdue. Something about an online portal not working. He asked me to check it like he always did. I took a sip of water. "You'll have to talk to your mother about that." He blinked. "Why?" "Because I don't handle your school expenses anymore." A beat. Claire **T me a glance, tight, warning. I didn't flinch. "I thought you." "I don't," I said. "Not anymore." The boy looked at her, confused, waiting for the translation. She gave him the edited version. "There's just been a change. Nothing you need to worry about right now." He accepted it. For now. But the seeds were planted. That night, she came to me in the study. "I don't think you understand what this will do." I looked up from the spreadsheet on my screen. "I think I understand exactly what it will do. You're sabotaging everything we built." "No," I said. "I'm just stopping payments on a product that no longer includes me." She stared. Not angry, just afraid. Like someone realizing the lights are going out and they never learned where the switches were. She sat down across from me. "Michael," she said softly. "Please, be reasonable." That name, it had weight when she said it that way. Used to soften me. But not now. "I was reasonable," I replied. "For 3 years. Maybe longer. While you slowly replaced me in every decision. While you smiled and nodded and pretended I was still part of the foundation. Even as you rebuilt it without me." Her voice dropped. "He's a child. He doesn't understand the politics of this." "Then maybe he'll understand the economics." She didn't speak. So I did. "This isn't punishment. It's consequence. If I'm not a parent, then I'm not a provider. If I don't have rights, I don't have responsibilities. You made that clear. Now I'm agreeing." Her hands trembled slightly. She folded them to hide it. "This isn't who you are," she said. "No," I said. "This is who I've become." She left without another word. The next morning, I woke to find the kitchen half cleaned, breakfast half-made, her keys missing from the bowl. She had taken him to school in silence. Good. Let her explain. Let her begin to see the cost of erasing someone. By noon, she called. I didn't pick up. By evening, she was home late, pale, tired. Said there had been a meeting with the counselor. That the school needed clarity. A signed letter from the new financial guardian. Otherwise enrollment might be paused. I looked up from the book I was reading. Then I suggest you call his father. Her face broke for just a second. Just enough. I don't even know where he is right now. I shrugged. Neither do I. She sat on the edge of the couch. You can't just walk away. I didn't walk away, I said. I was told I wasn't here in the first place. The rest of that night passed in low voices, half sentences, unfinished explanations whispered behind closed doors. The boy didn't ask questions. Yet, but the illusion was gone. This wasn't a family anymore. It was a contract, and I had just ended my side of the deal. Silence changes shape when it's no longer avoidance. When it becomes a decision. In the days that followed, the house felt hollowed out. Not loud. Not tense in the way people expect. Just stripped. Like a place that had lost its purpose and hadn't been reassigned yet. Claire moved through the rooms carefully, as if sound itself might trigger something irreversible. She stopped asking questions. Stopped explaining. Stopped pretending this was temporary. The boy noticed things before he asked about them. That's how children are. He noticed the lunch account balance, the missing permissions, the way Claire checked her email more often and sighed when she thought no one was watching. He noticed I no longer reminded him about homework or practice schedules, that I didn't check the calendar, didn't ask how school went. I didn't ignore him out of cruelty. I ignored him because my role was finished. Silence in this house had always been mistaken for patience, for tolerance, for loyalty, but that was never what it was. It was endurance, and endurance has a limit. Mine had been reached quietly, without ceremony, without a final speech or dramatic exit. Claire tried once more a week later. She stood in the doorway of the study while I reviewed paperwork that no longer included her name. She leaned against the frame, arms folded, eyes tired. You're really going to do this? She said. I didn't look up. I already am. You know this isn't what anyone wanted. I closed the folder. Finally met her eyes. That stopped mattering when I was corrected in public. Her jaw tightened. You're acting like this was an attack. It was a declaration. She shook her head. You're being rigid. No, I said. I'm being accurate. She stepped inside, lowered her voice. He's confused. I was too, I replied. For years. She opened her mouth, closed it again, then said, So that's it? You just withdraw? I considered the word. Yes, I said, because anything that comes back to me now should be intentional, not assumed. She didn't cry, not then. She just nodded once, slowly, as if filing away a loss she hadn't expected to account for. She left the room without another word. That night, I slept better than I had in months. Not because I felt victorious or justified, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't filling in gaps that were never meant for me to occupy. I wasn't funding a version of myself that no one respected. The school sent follow-up notices, legal language, deadlines. Claire handled them, or didn't. It wasn't my concern. The boy stopped speaking to me altogether. That was fine. Silence cuts both ways, and this time I wasn't the one bleeding from it. Weeks passed. People like to imagine consequences as explosions, tears, apologies, sudden realizations, and desperate reconciliations. But most consequences arrive quietly, as weight, as absence, as the slow recognition that something essential is no longer automatic. That was what happened here. No one begged. No one apologized. No one admitted fault. And that told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't missed as a person. I was missed as a function. And once you see that distinction, you can't unsee it. I continued paying my share of what was mine. Mortgage, utilities tied to my name, groceries I consumed. I didn't abandon responsibility. I simply narrowed it to what was actually mutual. Claire stopped making future plans, stopped talking about next year, about college, about trips and milestones. Those conversations now required a different foundation, one she hadn't built yet. Sometimes I caught her watching me, as if trying to determine whether this version of me would soften, whether I'd revert, whether silence would crack. Didn't, because silence wasn't absence anymore. It was a boundary. I had spent years believing that love meant staying even when you were diminished, that commitment meant absorbing disrespect quietly, that being a stepfather meant accepting erasure as part of the deal. I was wrong. Love without agency isn't love. It's utility. And I was done being useful. I don't know what Claire told others. Friends, family, the school. Maybe she framed it as a misunderstanding. Maybe she painted me as cold. I didn't correct the narrative. I didn't need to. The truth didn't require witnesses. All it required was my consent. And I had withdrawn it. So no, this wasn't revenge. It wasn't punishment. It wasn't bitterness. It was alignment with reality, with language, with the role I had been assigned finally, explicitly, and my refusal to continue playing it for free. If something returns to me now, it will do so because it chooses to, not because it assumes I'll endure, not because I'm silent, not because I'm convenient. Silence taught me that. And now I ask you, was I wrong to step out of a role that existed only when it was needed? Or would you have continued paying for a place you were told, publicly and clearly, was never yours? Because I listened. And once I did, I acted.